So ladies, gentlemen of the DCU, today's video is going to be an interesting one. At least, I'd like to think so, and I'm kind of surprised that I haven't done this already. And as you can tell from the title, we are doing our top 10 most anticipated projects in DCU Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. Now, it's important to remember, as of when making this video, if you happen to be watching this from the future, these are the projects that we have so far for Chapter 1. It's not all of the projects that are yet to come in Chapter 1. So what I would love for you guys to do down in the comments below is when I go through the list, as I'm saying my number 10, my number 9, my number 8, type yours. But without wasting too much more time, let's get into number 10. And I do feel like I need to keep saying this, just because certain projects are way down at the bottom of the list doesn't mean that I'm not excited for them. And I hate putting this one at number 10, because at number 10, we have Creature Commandos. I know. And again, this is what I mean. I didn't want to put this at number 10 because I'm really interested in watching it. As we know, it's an animated series. James Gunn has written all of the episodes, and I do like his writing. You know, most recently, I guess with Guardians, but Peacemaker. So this ragtag crew of Creature Commandos will heavily likely be right up my street, especially with the kind of group and superhero team that this is. Because if you didn't know already, it's another one of those groups in DC where they were initially assembled as Project M, specializing as a part of this psychological warfare effort during the days of World War II. And one of the scientists working on the project understood that people feared monsters, right? Kind of like, anything looking a bit ghoulish, a bit creaturey, a bit monstery. So with that logic, he's like, well, I'm going to put my head to the task of creating a super team that would put the fear of God into enemy troops. So as a result of that, we got the Creature Commandos team that you're probably seeing on screen right now, who fought a lot of, they can't say the word because of demonetization back in the 1940s. But what we do know is that they're set in modern day this time. So I wouldn't be surprised if Waller has something to do with this team, especially because, as we know James Gunn said, characters move into animation, out of animation, usually having the same actor play their voice as who plays them in live action with regards to these DCU projects. And we already know that one of the characters will be appearing in the live action Waller show. So, I'm really looking forward to Creature Commandos. Once again, I love shows like Doom Patrol. I love, somewhat, and as James Gunn does as well, the kind of outcast characters, maybe characters that not everyone's familiar with, but it's got some real rich material there, and it's characters that you'd think, the Doom Patrol, look at those guys. Oh, the Creature Commandos, they're literally kind of creature-esque, but they open a lot of humanity into these characters with the writing, usually. A lot of depth there, on top of just the crazy stuff that they get up to anyway. So, really looking forward to this. I hate to put it at number 10, but it is what it is. I had to make this ranking. So, number 9 is Waller. And I had a hard time deciding, am I more looking forward to Waller or Creature Commandos? And it's kind of the thing that right now it feels like a bit of a flip of a coin. Will it land on this side? Will it land on that side? But what I will say is, with Waller being about the story of Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis, a former DCEU casting, what we know, as James Gunn said, is that she's going to team up with members of Team Peacemaker, which is probably why it's at number 9 for me. A big win for me. Like, I loved Peacemaker. And as Gunn calls it, it's like a fantastic story out of this world. So as for now, we don't really know what the plot is about. But if I would have to hazard a guess, for those of you who have seen Peacemaker, at the end, we have Waller's daughter quite literally expose the US government for Task Force X and what happened during the events of the show with Project Butterfly. And she even named her mother, who is in charge of the program, as Amanda Waller. Like, this was on public news in the DC Universe. Now, what I will say is, since we are getting Peacemaker characters put into the DCU, we are getting Peacemaker Season 2. Gunn is working on that after he's done Superman Legacy. He's confirmed that on a podcast. You can argue that certain things might not be canon at the end of Peacemaker Season 1. For example, when Cena's Peacemaker met the Justice League, I mean, for all we know right now, there isn't a Justice League, so that Superman floating there wouldn't have been David Corenswet's, for all we know right now, just for an example. So there are some things that could change. So you could argue that the ending with Waller getting exposed and the Black Ops government program getting exposed might not have happened. But either way, you could argue Waller could be following that story. We do know that they team up with members of Team Peacemaker, but also given that the name is Waller, like that's the name of the show, it might also offer a bit of a character study on Waller while she handles all of whatever's going on, because beforehand we haven't really seen too much there. She just assembles people, can be very ruthless as per Amanda Waller in the source material, but maybe they can show a bit of depth there amongst all of the shenanigans that the Peacemaker team get up to, which is usually the vision of James Gunn, you know, mixing comedy with depth of emotion to characters. So number 9, I think, is fairly fitting. So number 8, up next with number 8 is Paradise Lost. Believe it or not, I put that above Waller and Creature Commandos. Paradise Lost is something that I've recently been thinking about a lot more. If you watch quite a few of my videos, you'll know that we spoke about Paradise Lost in my most recent DCU discussion series video. Go check it out if you haven't done so already. But since reflecting over that, because I was asked about it and I was thinking, wait, how do I feel about this? What is the point of this show? And I was, going through it, and it was basically like me talking to myself on camera to you guys. And by the end of it, I was like, actually, maybe I do see the vision here. And as a result, I'm actually low-key really looking forward to seeing the Amazons' history with Themyscira. As it's been described by James Gunn, it's almost like Game of Thrones with Westeros, but with all of the inhabitants of Paradise Island. They've even offered other little tidbits outside that video of the Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters announcement, saying that all the darkness and drama and political intrigue behind the society of only women. How did this society of women come about? What does it mean? What are their politics like? What are their rules? Who is in charge? What are all the games that they play with each other to get to the top? And, the Amazon's history and Themyscira goes back a very, 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 very long time. And since this is a series, I do think that this could get pretty cool with how, the Amazons even came to be, how this relates to the gods in the early days, the comparisons to Game of Thrones, Westeros, but also darkness and drama and political intrigue. If you like Thrones, and those words are what I would say describes that show, like darkness, drama, political intrigue, fantasy elements, obviously, yeah. I'm looking forward to Paradise Lost and what kind of, retrospective look that this could give us on the actual DCU's history with regards to Themyscira, Amazons. It's before Wonder Woman, but who knows how it's going to bleed into other things. Okay, so at number 7 here is Booster Gold. So Booster Gold is a character that I'm looking forward to. I wouldn't say that, I'm quite familiar with Booster Gold, but I wouldn't say he's in the top 5, maybe even 10 of my favorite DC superheroes. And that's no disrespect to Booster Gold. I actually know how popular he is and how many people love this character. And it's not that I don't love him, it's just quite simply I've got a lot of other characters out there. I mean, there's a lot of characters in the DC universe that I prioritize more, but he's still at number 7 for me. And it's fascinating that he's getting his very own live action series. And I do think, given the character of Booster Gold, that there is a huge amount of potential there. As James Gunn says, he's a loser from the future who uses future technology to come back to present day and become a superhero so people will love him. It is basically the superhero story of imposter syndrome on an HBO Max series. Well, Max now, but obviously back then we still had HBO Max. So do you know what I mean? I feel like Gunn, even though he's obviously not going to direct everything here or write everything, but at the very least, as per what Kevin Feige does, he will usher the writers who are writing these stories. Like, he will know where they kind of need to get canonically and what they want, what bars they will need to hit with certain story beats. And Booster Gold is such a quintessential James Gunn character that makes sense of why he would want to include him in this universe. A character who goes back in time to basically be loved by people, be looked at as a superhero, but really you've just kind of come from the 25th century, stolen something here, stolen something there, got together a bit of a suit. He used Rip Hunter's time sphere, and it's like, hey guys, here I am. But I feel like this could get really introspective. We'll see him kind of be a bit of a cocky arsehole, I'm sure, but as time goes on, just like what we've seen with other characters under James Gunn's control, I think he'll become a very lovable character who actually truly realizes what it's like to be a hero. Also, with Booster Gold, we have the possibility of Shalimar Dueñas Blue Beetle carrying on, and he could pop up in this series as well. But also, I'm just intrigued about the bigger repercussions because, you know, Booster Gold even having something like the Legion flight ring from the future that he stole, or Rip Hunter's time sphere. Like, what could that mean? We're going to see characters like that, or will there be any Easter eggs, big Easter eggs? Like, this is a big cohesive DC universe that I still don't think everyone is grasping how huge this is going to be. So big characters that maybe aren't even crossing our minds right now could somehow weave their way into this series, even if it is only in name and cool little ways. And Booster Gold himself, coming from the future, what would that mean for characters in present day? Because he knows, at least as of public knowledge, what happens with them. And, you know, technically the future canon of David Corenswet's Superman. You know, he's not going to give everything away, but like there's a lot that they could play with there, given that he's from the 25th century. So yeah, I do think Booster Gold's going to be a really fun time, and that is why he is at rank 7, but rank 6. So number 6 in this list is the Authority. So the Authority is something that I think has a huge amount of potential. I mean, clearly this is why I'm more excited for it than Booster Gold, Paradise Lost, Waller. Even when you hear James Gunn talk about it in the Gods and Monsters video, he is so spiced up when talking about this film in particular, because he even says in his own words, the Authority is a passion project of mine. He is really excited to bring this to the DCU. He even goes on to say that they will be interacting with all of their primary DCU characters. This is why there's been a lot of speculation out there. Will Superman be going up against the Authority? What will happen there? Are they backdoor piloting like low-key in Superman Legacy? So the next film after that, after Lanterns, as you're seeing on screen right now, is the Authority. Maybe, maybe not. I think they will have some addressing in Superman Legacy, because again, these characters are as what people describe as, if you're a fan of The Boys, they are The Boys, but in the DCU. As James Gunn says, they think the world is broken and want to fix it by any means necessary. A very different look at superheroes. So I do think this, as I've said it a billion times before, I'm sure you guys are getting sick of me saying it, this is going to be a bit of a reverse Kingdom Come situation with metahumans in the future that brought Superman back to bring somewhat law and order and an example to look up to. I think, again, you're going to have that reverse situation, but with a Kal-El Superman, Corenswet, who is actually at the opposite end of his career. Not quite day one, but he's only just emerging, and it's going to be other heroes out there who haven't had a Superman to look to necessarily. And I'm not saying that was just completely change the Authority's ways, but I do think in this movie, we're going to see some very interesting stuff go down. Some very controversial handlings of how a superhero team would even handle something that will reach the news in this film, and that will catch the attention of other heroes like Superman. Because if Superman hears that the Authority publicly in a city in the DC universe has done something or handled a villain in the most extreme way, but by any means necessary, he wouldn't just stand idly by and let that happen if he can help it. So this is very intriguing. The characters in of themselves are badass and very, very, very interesting. So seeing them being brought to live action is going to be very destructive and very... I don't see how this won't be R-rated. I mean, I'm not saying it is going to be, but I feel like it should be, but it might not be, given that obviously they want a lot of people to buy tickets. But yeah, the Authority, very much so looking forward to it. Right now, I think quite a few people are somewhat sleeping on it, kind of mocking it a bit, saying, who the hell are the Authority? I mean, I get it. A lot of people don't know who the Authority are, but you'll wait and see. I mean, hopefully we get there. And that's another thing, Warner Brothers Discovery. Are we even going to get there? But if we do, I think a lot of you who are like, the Authority, like, you'll be like, oh, the Authority. Number 5, rank number 5. Who lands right in the middle of all of this for me? Out of the 10 projects that we've got so far, who is bam, smack, pow in the middle? And that is Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Now, as for Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, I am in love with the idea that, again, for better or for worse, whatever you feel about the fact we're getting low-key a new universe. I say low-key because, you know, we are getting some other characters from the previous one. I love that we are branching out with so many new prospects. You know, we are getting a new Superman who doesn't have the backstory of Henry Cavill's Man of Steel. Like we've got a whole new younger Clark Kent, and he's going to have Kara out there. So with us, what James Gunn says here, Tom King's run on Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, so we're going to turn that into a big science fiction epic film. Now, Superman is a guy who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents, whereas Supergirl in this story, she's a character who was raised on a chunk of Krypton. She watched everybody around her perish in some terrible way, so she's a much more jaded character. And I do think that is something I really can't wait to see on screen, because I'm not saying it's easy to be Superman. Shout out to Five for Fighting now, the Superman song, if you know what I mean. It's playing in my head already right now. Being Clark Kent is not an easy job, but Kara, I don't need to give everyone a whole education right now, because I'm sure you're already aware, but Clark was raised with trials and tribulations. It wasn't easy, but he was raised in Kansas by Jonathan and Martha Kent. They're two very loving people. Imagine being like Kara, who got to around 14 or so, experienced the planet for like a good 14 years of your life. You guys know what that's like, living up to 14 years old. You're not a kid anymore. It's not like having, hey, do I really remember this from when I was 4 or 5? You've lived 14 years, a whole different culture and society and civilization. And then that blows up, and now you're coming to Earth. So, the whole jaded aspect of this character, again, that, she was meant to go meet baby Clark, and now all of a sudden he's got the fame of Superman, and now probably everyone's got to look at you like only through the lens of Superman. There's so much that can go into Kara's story with Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. Now, will it follow Tom King's comic exactly? I don't know, given the adventure that she goes on after what happens to Krypto. And could it, tell her backstory through flashbacks? Will it, be set in present day? Will she already be established in this DCU? So, Corenswet Superman is out there, and people know about the Superman, but has Kara already arrived and, been like, hey, cousin, okay, we know each other, but this movie is just going to start off being like, well, hey, I'm already here in the world, but this is my story kind of thing. So maybe they do the Tom King story where she goes off and does something, goes on a bit of an adventure, but we see it through flashbacks. I don't know. Or will we see it in more of an actual prequel way where she is on her way to Earth. She's going to meet David Corenswet Superman for the first time, but as all of that is happening, we see what happened. I really don't know, because the reason why I chuck all of that out there is because adaptations aren't copy and paste, as I always say. When they're going to make this into a movie, it won't copy and paste the comic book. They'll adapt the core and fundamental ideas from that story. I can talk about this all day long, but we just don't know how they're going to tackle it. Will Sasha Calle be Supergirl? I have no idea. Will it be a new casting? I have no idea, but number 5 is for sure where Supergirl deserves to be, or at least in my opinion, for my anticipation. So who is at number 4, guys? Number 4 of this top 10 is 100% Lanterns. I am very excited for Lanterns. That's why it's in my top 5. There is so much to be excited about here. I don't know if you fully gauged that yet yourself. This is a terrestrial-based TV show, which is almost like True Detective, with a couple of Lanterns who are space cops watching over Precinct Earth. Now, I love that, and I think ever since a lot of people found out that Nathan Fillion is playing Guy Gardner, that's the Green Lantern we're first going to see in Superman Legacy. They're like, oh, there's no other Green... No, we're getting a Lantern show where you literally have Jon Stewart as a Green Lantern and Hal Jordan. What I will admit is that they could be playing around with a bit of canon there in terms of that Nathan Fillion is Guy Gardner, and he's quite a bit older, so did he technically come before Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart? Is he kind of like the more harsher military sergeant type on them kind of thing? I mean, I know a lot of people have issues with that concept, but for now, all we know is that Guy Gardner's a Green Lantern, and I don't think this will make Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart older than Nathan Fillion. They're not going to be older than their 50s, so they're going to be younger than Guy Gardner. But either way, before I get too distracted by all of that, I love the description of how this could be True Detective-like. They're watching over Precinct Earth, but as they go along, as James Gunn says, in it they discover a terrifying mystery that ties into their larger story of the DCU. That is big, and that ever since that was said, that caught my attention right off the bat. The fact that in this series, as space cops watching over Precinct Earth, they discover a terrifying mystery that, what the heck is this terrifying mystery? But he then goes on to even say that it ties into their larger story of the DCU. Larger story meaning, hey, we've got Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. That is the 8 to 10 year plan. Obviously, at some point, even though we don't know what it is now, there's going to be this overarching kind of threat that maybe gets teased, whether you want to liken it to the slow burn of the Thanos introductions kind of thing. This could be our first glimpse of that. What is this terrifying mystery, this ancient terrifying mystery that ties into their larger story of the DCU? That has got me super intrigued. Super intrigued. I have no idea what this is. Some people were speculating about the center once upon a time, maybe, but I don't know. It looks like the center could be a Creature Commandos actual animation threat that they're dealing with, and could be, if that's going to be dealt with in that would be resolved by the end of that project. That's if that is even going to be introduced in that. Some people have maybe said Necron, but the thing is, I agree with a lot of people, that would be a really cool ancient mystery, right? That will ripple out into their larger DCU story. That would be insane. But I don't know if they're going to do that, like, right now. That would be very formidable, though. And it would be a horrifying mystery that they stumble across that they need to look into a bit more. And it doesn't just end in the Lantern show. And they're not going to, like, get Necron out there and then, but it's going to ripple throughout multiple DCU projects. Again, like how when we first saw Thanos teasers, you didn't see him rain down hell straight away, did you? So never say never, but obviously, lanterns. They're Green Lanterns as well. Like, that's so exciting to me. And the fact that we already got one in Superman Legacy, God knows what's going to happen there. But then it's like, oh, no, wait, that's not just it. You're going to have Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart in the Lantern show. And by the way, James Gunn did say, and I quote, story of a couple of Green Lanterns and a few other Lanterns peppered in there. So probably Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner again after Superman Legacy, and even other people on top of Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart. Okay, so number 3 may start to get predictable for some of you. However, maybe the order will surprise you when we get down to the last, or the top 2 rather. So number 3, I kind of want to put this higher, but with the top 2, I guess I couldn't. Number 3 for me is Swamp Thing. I love Swamp Thing. You guys should know this about me. As what's been described by James Gunn, it's a very dark horror story in the origins of the monster who is Swamp Thing. And although it's totally outside the rest of the DCU, it will still feed into the rest of the stories. Now, do I even need to state, like, some of you may be looking at me right now saying, what's so cool about Swamp Thing? But this is where my bias comes in, right? I love Swamp Thing. I was so happy that we got a DC Universe series with amazing, by the way, that was like a really cool show, but the prosthetics on that show and the way they brought Swamp Thing to life was incredible. So to imagine a movie level version of that, I'm very, very happy about, knowing that this is like a cohesive cinematic universe where, as Gunn just quite literally said, it will still feed into the rest of the stories in the DCU. So it isn't a one-off. It gives me hope that we will get beyond just the origin of Swamp Thing and into the Rot, Anton Arcane, maybe Justice League Dark characters, where that can go there, because I really do hope that it bleeds into the larger DCU. And I say that like that because despite what I said with what Gunn said and how it will still feed into the rest of the stories, Mangold did say not so long ago with how he's sure that DC views Swamp Thing as a franchise, but he, as the director, would be viewing it as a very simple, clean, gothic horror movie about this man-monster doing his own, he's doing his own thing, a standalone. So fair enough that that's his approach. And by the way, I agree with that approach. It's kind of like what Matt Reeves says. He's got an arc for 3 movies, but you know what? I'm going to put that out of my head. I'm going to view this movie as if it's the only movie I get to do. I'm going to make it as if it works as a standalone. So even though James Mangold has said that, Gunn, the actual CEO, co-CEO, has said that it will, still feed into the rest of the story. So I hope to see him again. And who knows, if it does insanely well in the box office, then maybe James Mangold would be like, oh, even though I viewed it as a standalone, I'm ready to now take on the Floronic Man or Anton Arcane or wherever else this could go. Or maybe just after the Swamp Thing movie. They're not going to necessarily do a sequel anytime soon, but we see him pop up in another thing. But I'm a huge Swamp Thing fan. There's so much rich lore there. We have heard that James Mangold does want to tackle it like his version of Frankenstein. So with what happens to Alec Holland, who becomes Swamp Thing, James Mangold has described it that he just, maybe the movie will wake up with him being this monster. But given what happens in the comics, he's like, how did I even get to this? Why are my fingers plant matter? Why am I plant? Like, what happened? So he's still him, but he's piecing together what happened. So throughout the movie, I guess he's going to get more and more context as to how he went from quite literally the human body into the monster that is Swamp Thing. So it will be an origin movie. It will be, very much so, this horror-esque kind of Swamp Thing, but I'm sure it's going to get very, very deep and emotional as well with him finding himself. But I really don't want it to be just limited to that. It could be like really cool, but it needs to carry on. I don't want to just see Swamp Thing only touched on and then, oh, that's it. Like, there's so much more of a deeper and darker, story to tell that connects to the dark roots, quite literally, of the rot in the DC universe that pull in other large stories and other bigger characters. I could ramble about Swamp Thing forever, but I'm so excited for his character to come into the DC universe, and I think it could be a really, really artful movie of an origin story of exploring what happened to Alec Holland and why did it happen and how did it happen that way, as the version of him who is now Swamp Thing pieces that all together. All right, so the final two, who is at the top of my top 10? Now, number 2, I'm going to have to admit, it was my number 1, but I swapped it around. And it might surprise you because you would think, I know who Boba's going to choose for number 1. But I'm not going to lie, I had to think to myself and be honest, like, what am I more excited for? But right now, as of where we are, as of when making this video, as of when uploading it, I'm not as excited as what I am for number 1. So number 2, believe it or not, is Batman the Brave and the Bold. Now, clearly, Batman is my favorite DC character. The description from Gunn with this project is that this is the introduction of the DCU's Batman. This is the story of Damian Wayne, who is Batman's actual son, who we didn't know existed for the first 8 to 10 years of his life. He was raised as a little murderer and assassin. He's a little son of a bitch. He's my favorite Robin. It's based on the Grant Morrison comic books run, which is one of my favorite Batman runs, and we are putting that all together right now. And he also goes on to say, and this is another hugely exciting aspect for me, and this is obviously a feature film, and it's going to feature other members of the extended Bat family, just because we feel like they've been left out of the Batman stories in the theater for far too long. Safran added. So I completely agree with the latter there. We are now finally getting a Batman movie. And just to like nail the context in even more, in the DC universe that has been operating already for a while by the time we even get in there in the first place. So when we see Superman Legacy, not only are we not going to see an origin for him because he's already been doing it for like, I don't know, year 2, year 3 or something, but Batman could have been doing this for like 7 to 12 years. He's not going to be like an old Batman because, again, if you want to argue Bruce starts at 25 years old, he could be like 37, give or take, after being like Batman year 12. Do you see what I mean? So this could be Batman the Brave and the Bold when Damian gets dropped off into his life, and it can work that way because if they want to incorporate Damian Wayne's accelerated aging, so let's just say every 1 year he's alive, 4 years go by, you can have Bruce at that age in the DCU and have a few Robins already. Now, this is an adaptation. What do I say? It's not copy and paste, so maybe they won't adapt everything. Maybe a Robin will get left out. But back to my main point here, I'm very excited because this is the answer to so many fans' wants as well. Like, okay, well, if you're not going to get fantastical Clayface blob monster in Matt Reeves' Batverse or anything like that, well, you will get that here. DCU Batman will be the answer to all of those fans who want fantastical adaptations of his Rogues Gallery villains. So you want Man-Bat? You could, in theory, easily have Man-Bat in the DCU. Matt Reeves's universe, no. I don't need to justify that again, but I'm telling you, you will not get it like that in Matt Reeves's world. But DCU, yes. So not only am I so hyped for, like, I'm not gonna lie, I love Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne, but I'm always going to be like, oh, we're getting a new Bruce Wayne casting. Who's that going to be? What's the aesthetic of this Batman going to look like? What does his suit look like? How's the actor going to be? What's the Batcave going to look like? How far? This is why it was number 1 for me. It really was. Not to mention the Bat family, what this can mean for future projects. Again, we've only had half of the Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters projects announced. Will Dick Grayson be Nightwing at this point? Maybe. Likely. If he is, will this mean there's a Titans project that's announced for the other 10+ plus projects to complete Chapter 1, let alone even Chapter 2, by the way. It could be a Chapter 2 project. I don't know. But Bat Family exists. They've said that. And just like a fantastical, maybe more comic book, unrealistic Batman in a way, like even with the way he fights compared to that of like Reeves's Batman or Christopher Nolan's Batman, there's a lot more grounded and realistic in those ways. We might see like Batman dodge basically bullets like we do in animation sometimes, and it's like, well, how's that possible really? But he's doing it, all that kind of stuff, right? So I do kind of want to put this at number 1, and there's probably some reasons why I'm forgetting that I'm not. And again, this is saying a lot because you guys know Batman's my favorite character. So for bias reasons, he kind of is my number 1 in this video. But he isn't at the bottom line. Do you know why? Because clearly, Superman Legacy is my most anticipated DCU project. Now, this could be for a bunch of reasons. I am so excited. Like, Superman, A, is one of my favorite characters. Not my favorite character overall. That is Batman. But Superman Legacy takes the cake in this video. Maybe it is because I have more of a tangible excitement there. Maybe it is because we have castings, David Corenswet as Clark Kent's Superman, Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. We have Isabella Merced as Hawkgirl, Eddie Gathegi as Mr. Terrific, Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, and Anthony Carrigan as Metamorpho. And I really try to not rank this based off of, well, we know more about Superman Legacy, so that's my number 1. It's really not just that. Even before that, I would say, even before the castings, there was still so much buzz about this. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of apprehension as well and a lot of criticism going into Superman Legacy, and even especially since the additional castings of Hawkgirl and Mr. Terrific and whatnot, people saying, oh, is it a Justice League movie? Even though Gunn has slammed down saying that Lois and Clark are the protagonists of this movie, and how can I tell both parts of Superman's story without including his metahuman compatriots? But again, before even the castings, I think because in of itself, this is the first major DCU project, the first DCU movie that's really going to be the first one to have the responsibility to set up the exposition and just the new status quo with this new DC universe. So when you see it, compared to really Creature Commandos and Waller, when you see Superman Legacy and the camera panning across whatever and this and that and the other, that is the DCU. What you're seeing there is what they want you to see the DCU as. The same can't really be said for something like Blue Beetle. So just with like how much pressure this movie has, and to be honest, like say what you will about James Gunn writing and directing it, I like him as a writer and director. You may think, but he's still not right for Superman. After everything I've heard him say, call me a sucker for like falling for his vision or not. I like his vision. I like what he said. I think he said everything that is sounding good to me so far. That's putting a check in my box. And I guess, yeah, I'm choosing to be optimistic about how it will turn out. I do get it. All while it really sucks that we don't have Henry Cavill anymore, I just can't deny it's really weird. Because I would have preferred, like, if back then I would have said, let's keep Henry Cavill, like, straight up. But now we're where we're at. I can't deny how excited I am for the prospect of a new Superman in a new vision with everything that kind of comes with that. Especially with the description being Superman Legacy tells the story of Superman's journey to reconcile his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing as Clark Kent of Smallville, Kansas. His embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way, guided by human kindness in a world that sees kindness as old-fashioned. And again, you could get into theory crafting there with, okay, will that influence be put onto and projected onto the heroes of the world and how they deal with certain situations? Like Superman is guided by human kindness in a world that sees kindness as old-fashioned. I truly do think that will be like also the Superman legacy of the title, as I've said before and I'll say it again. It's not like, oh, I'm David Corenswet Superman and Jonathan Kent, I'm going to pass on my legacy to you. Carry on. No. It's going to be like, I see it more in the fact that Superman kind of being a new kid in the town, but maybe not quite the new kid, but being not like a veteran Superman. It's going to leave a legacy and an example that he set to other heroes. That will be Superman's legacy. The kindness that he shows in a world that has kind of forgot kindness, or at least views it as old-fashioned. He's going to be this Superman, arguably more powerful than all of these other heroes, and he's still choosing to be like the way he is. Just so kind, the way I don't need to describe Superman to you. And I think that will be the rippling out legacy as per what the title of this movie is. And I just see it so much with everything that's been described to us. And I'm probably forgetting to include some details that we also have on the movie with what James Gunn has put out there with cool little tidbits that probably make it or just articulate it so much better than what I am now. But for this reason, again, even before Corenswet and Brosnahan were cast, and even before we knew the front runners, I was just like, you know, I'm looking forward to Batman Brave and the Bold. Like, if I really think about it, I probably get myself really worked up with excitement, almost as I did a second ago. You realize this is a new Batman, a new Batcave, a new Gotham, a new world. He's like 8 to 12 years into his career. He could already have a Nightwing out. Like, there's so much, right? Oh my God, I'm so excited about that. But I think Superman Legacy takes the cake. And maybe it is because it's the one that has all the pressure as the first movie that needs to do well. But I think it's going to try everything it can do to knock your socks off, and I do have faith that it will possibly do that. And this is the Superman for the next 10 years, 8 to 10 years. And this is going to be the beginning journey for that character. So with that being said, guys, after this long ramble, I hope you enjoyed the video. You know, I know we've talked a lot on the channel about the DCU, but I've never really ranked these projects in terms of what I'm most excited for and why that is. So I need to know your own lists. Do you agree with me? But maybe I doubt it, because there's still 10 projects and you could have a slightly different order, or maybe your order is massively different. I have no idea, but I'm looking forward to going down into that comment section and just seeing what you guys have ranked with your top 10. Other than that, though, guys, I would really appreciate a like on this video if you've got this far. Do consider subscribing for more videos like this, more news, reviews, bonus videos like this. I'm going to be doing some more videos like this in the time that we're not getting so much news given the writers and actors strike. Until next time, guys, I'm going to love you and leave you. So once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. I'll see you people of the DCU in the next video. Goodbye.